Welcome back. Let's get into this discussion now. Earlier this week, the Pretoria High Court reserved its judgment in the Democratic Alliance's challenge to the Employment Equity Amendment Act. Now, the DA argues that the amendments are unconstitutional, claiming they violate the principle of equality before the law. The government, however, is opposing the application. A ruling on the matter will be delivered at a later date. For more on this, let's now speak to Monde Ndlovu, who's the Managing Director at the Black Management Forum. Monde, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So how would you then interpret the DA's framing of this act as discriminatory against essentially minority groups, and highlighting that it has far-reaching impact on provincial employment practices? Of course, we've seen reaction from other parties, the ANC, saying that this move by the DA is anti-transformation and an effort or rather an affront to the working class. I mean, as a leading voice for the advancement of black professionals, what's your position?
Thank you very much, my sister, and good afternoon to your viewers and yourself. Yes, I think firstly it's quite disappointing to see the level of pushback that we're seeing around transformational issues, and we've seen this for some time now, of these transformational laws being challenged directly in courts and challenged publicly as well, that they will impact economic growth, etc. But we also, secondly, need to understand how we got to where we are. We didn't just wake up and talk about sector targets out of nowhere. So we firstly need to understand that even with the promulgation of the Employment Equity Act from 1998 already, and what the BMF as well had been pushing since 1993 around targets, specific targets that will enable the economic system, enable the upward mobility of black professionals, and we coined it as driving a critical mass based on certain sector targets to ensure that transformation begins to take place. So we've been on this drive around driving employment equity since 1993, in 1998 promulgation, the year 2000 targets of the BMF, which were not met. We're now sitting in 2025. And to begin to suggest that these are some draconian amendments, etc., actually do not even begin to fully appreciate the role of transforming a business and transforming the country as well. And I think, thirdly, businesses, companies, they are the primary beneficiary of transformation. Why? Because it is the business that must perform, it is the business that must grow, and you've got to have different people coming in, and hence affirmative action, which then was driving the advent of black people and Africans, coloreds, Indians, etc., into the workplace, so that the workplace can begin to be diverse, to begin to embrace the human capital that was left out of the country for many, 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 many years. So it is quite critical to note that at a microcosm, that organizations, businesses are the primary beneficiaries, because they need the talent, they need the different talent, they need the diverse ideas, they need the diverse thinking, the diverse voices, so that the business itself can begin to grow. So when you then now challenge the targeting of this point, you're actually challenging transformation directly. So you're basically saying that businesses will transform by themselves without assistance, and therefore you're suggesting that at the heart of business, it fully embraces different people, human capital. We have not seen that behavior. We've had to assist businesses to transform by talking about it, by putting legislation around it, and because of that, we've seen a little bit of upward mobility.
Monde, of course, you know, the section that's in contestation here is section 15A, with the concern that the Minister of Employment and Labour might be able to then set these rigid national targets for every economic sector without any regard to the context of, you know, specific firms, and might even impose these extremely heavy fines and the risk then of criminal convictions for those failure, you know, to meet these. So this is what the DA is also arguing. I mean, what's your reaction to this? Do you think it's part and play of what you're saying is pushback?
So definitely it's part of the pushback. Secondly, that these are negotiated targets. So in other words, the Department of Employment and Labor, even before the promulgation of these certain sections, and Section 53 as well, the certificate of compliance, they had been doing sector engagements, etc. So this thing is not coming out of nowhere, that the minister has been giving too much power to set sector targets. Now, these targets are also a 5-year target, as we have seen, that over 5 years. And if they're unable to reach them, of course, there's going to be an engagement. What we must also appreciate is that businesses actually, before even these sector targets came into play, were budgeting for fines themselves, right, for not reaching their own employment equity targets as their own organizations, even way before we had these sector targets in place. So already we're having that issue that businesses are budgeting for penalties, which means they're not really caring that much about driving transformation internally. So now when we have this external pressure to say we're still on this journey to transform the country, and the ministers having a little bit more power to set sector targets, they are negotiated targets, agreed upon targets for each sector to ensure that we become more inclusive. Now, the criminal aspect of things, not necessarily the first point that will take place in terms of punitive measures, but the certificate of compliance is critical so that those businesses can continue to do business with the state, etc., and that they are showing that they are on that journey to transform, to move towards the targets. Now, the other important aspect about targets is that every organization has got operational targets, has got performance targets, has got revenue targets, has got all sorts of metrics that ensure that the business actually moves forward from a performance point of view. No one walks into a business and you don't perform, you don't have measurements, you don't have targets, you don't have goals, you don't have ambitions, you don't have a vision. But with transformation, it seems like we are not agreeing that there should be a vision or should be a target. There is an end goal in mind, and therefore it is critical to have these targets, not quotas. These are targets so that we are working towards a particular goal. And if they're not reached, we need to then understand why they've not been reached, etc. So really, this is still assisting companies to move in that particular direction and open up not only to Africans, but women as well, and also people living with disability who have plateaued as far as the statistics are concerned, sitting around 1% in terms of their own upward mobility. So we've got to have these targets.
Absolutely, Monde. Thank you so much for that. So let's leave it there for now. Monde Ndlovu is the Managing Director for the Black Management Forum. Of course, a ruling on this particular matter will be made at or delivered rather, at a later date.